Mark stood in the back of the wedding hall, his heart pounding in his chest. The air was filled with the scent of fresh roses and the soft hum of violins. It was supposed to be the happiest day of his life, a day of promises and new beginnings. Instead, he felt a crushing weight in his chest as he clutched the evidence in his trembling hands. Just 2 days ago, Mark's best friend Lucas had shown up at his doorstep, his face pale and his hands shaking. Lucas hesitated before handing Mark his phone, muttering, "You need to see this." On the screen were messages between Mark's fiancée, Emily, and someone named Nathan. The texts were explicit, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Mark had spent the next 48 hours in a haze, questioning everything. He'd hoped it was some cruel misunderstanding, but the evidence was undeniable. He decided to confront Emily after the wedding, but as he stood there now, watching her walk down the aisle, all radiant smiles and glowing innocence, he couldn't contain his anger. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke of love, trust, and fidelity. Each word felt like a dagger to Mark's heart. When it came time for the vows, Emily's voice was sweet and steady as she promised to love him forever. Mark's turn came. He cleared his throat, the room falling silent. Instead of beginning his vows, he pulled the phone from his pocket and stared directly at Emily. "Emily," he began, his voice shaking, "I thought today would be the start of our forever. But how can I vow to be faithful when you couldn't even make it to our wedding without betraying me?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emily's face turned ghostly pale as Mark handed the phone to her father, who was seated in the front row. "Take a look at what your daughter has been up to," Mark said, his voice now steady but cold. The room erupted into whispers as Emily stammered, "Mark, this isn't what it looks like." "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," Mark retorted. "And Nathan, I know you're here. Why don't you come up and explain yourself?" A man in the back row slowly stood, his face a mixture of guilt and defiance. The guests' attention shifted to him, their expressions a mix of shock and disapproval. Mark turned back to Emily. "I thought I knew you. I thought you loved me. But now I see the truth." He pulled off the wedding ring and placed it on the altar. "You made your choice, Emily. And now I'm making mine. Goodbye." Without another word, Mark walked out of the hall, leaving behind a stunned audience, a humiliated fiancée, and the shattered remains of what was supposed to be their perfect day. As Mark pushed open the heavy double doors of the wedding hall, the bright afternoon sunlight hit his face. It felt like a slap of reality, harsh but liberating. His hands trembled, but with every step, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The murmur of shocked voices and Emily's frantic pleas faded behind him. He didn't look back. Outside, Lucas was waiting, leaning against Mark's car. He straightened when he saw his friend approach, his face a mixture of worry and relief. "You did it," Lucas said softly. Mark nodded, his jaw tight. "I couldn't stay quiet. Not after what I saw." Lucas clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You deserve better, man. Let's get out of here." Before they could leave, Emily burst through the doors, her wedding dress billowing behind her like a broken sail. Her makeup was smudged, her once carefully crafted image now unraveling. "Mark, please wait," she called, her voice desperate. Mark stopped but didn't turn around. "What more is there to say, Emily?" he asked, his voice weary. "I made a mistake," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what I was thinking. It was a stupid fling, nothing more. Please don't throw everything away because of this." Mark finally turned to face her, his expression hard. "You didn't just make a mistake, Emily. You made a choice. Over and over again. You chose to lie, to betray me, to humiliate me. And now you want forgiveness because it's convenient for you? No." Emily sobbed, but Mark's resolve didn't waver. "I loved you," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I was ready to give you everything, but you didn't value that. You didn't value me, and I deserve someone who does." Nathan appeared behind Emily, his face flushed with shame. Mark's gaze shifted to him. Take care of her, Nathan, Mark said bitterly. You can have the mess she made. Without another glance, Mark got into his car. Lucas slid into the passenger seat and they drove off, leaving Emily and the chaos behind. As they drove, Mark stared out the window, his emotions a whirlwind. The betrayal still stung, but with every mile, he felt a small spark of hope flicker inside him. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. The drive was silent for a long time, the hum of the engine and the faint sound of the wind the only noises filling the car. Lucas didn't push Mark to talk. He knew his friend needed time to process everything. After about 30 minutes, Mark finally broke the silence. You know what hurts the most? Lucas glanced at him briefly. What? Mark's voice was soft but raw. I saw a future with her, a family, a home. I thought she was my person, you know, but she didn't even care enough to keep it honest. Lucas tightened his grip on the steering wheel. I get it, man, but you dodged a bullet. Imagine finding out about all this after you were married, maybe with kids in the mix. It's better to know now, no matter how much it hurts. Mark nodded, though the pain still gnawed at him. You're right, but it's going to take time. Lucas gave him a reassuring smile. And you'll get through it. You've got me and everyone else who actually cares about you. She's the one who lost something good today. They pulled into the parking lot of a small diner on the edge of town. Lucas insisted on stopping, saying Mark needed to eat and clear his head. Reluctantly, Mark agreed. Inside, the smell of coffee and frying bacon filled the air. The place was mostly empty, save for a few locals scattered at the booths. The two men slid into a corner booth, and a cheerful waitress came over to take their order. Mark wasn't hungry, but Lucas ordered for both of them. Trust me, he said. You'll feel better with some food in you. As they waited, Mark stared at his reflection in the window. He felt like he didn't recognize himself. The man looking back at him wasn't the same person who had woken up that morning, hopeful and ready to start a new chapter. The food arrived and Lucas nudged him. Eat, even if you don't feel like it. Mark took a bite, the warmth of the food grounding him. After a while, he found himself opening up about things he hadn't even realized he was holding in. How he'd ignored small red flags, how Emily had always seemed slightly distant, how he'd brushed aside his gut instincts in the name of love. You can't blame yourself for this, Lucas said firmly. She made her choices, but you'll come out stronger for it. By the time they left the diner, the ache in Mark's chest had dulled slightly. Lucas dropped him off at his apartment, and Mark promised to call if he needed anything. When he stepped inside, the silence of his home was almost overwhelming. He sat on the couch and stared at the wedding invitation still sitting on the coffee table. With a deep breath, he picked continue next episode, coming soon. Thanks for watching.